these are materials from this farm. Anything that we harvest is brought here, and then we pile them. There's that system of piling compost. And our type of compost is called cold compost. We have 3 types of compost: hot, warm, and cold. Cold is where you're using more than 90% of carbonaceous materials. These are carbonaceous materials. The ones that you have already harvested, or the ones that have already flowered, those are carbonaceous materials. So over 90% of the materials that are here have already, either you have harvested or they have flowered. And only 10% is what we call now the green or the nitrogenous materials. When you're talking about hot compost, you're using 90% of non-flowered, of materials that have not flowered, and 10% of carbonaceous materials. So you see the opposite here, of hot and cold. And then warm compost, here you're using 50-50. 50 of carbonaceous and 50 of nitrogenous or succulent materials. But we prefer these because this is the best kind of compost. It has a lot of nutrients that will now, and a lot of organic matter, and a lot of lignin. Lignin is the woody parts, yeah? When you put them in the soil, they will last longer in the soil as they provide food to the plants, as opposed to the hot compost, which, you know, it's just like chemical fertilizer. It's useless, right? Yeah, so these are materials from the farm, and yeah, sometimes, because we don't advise farmers to use animal manure. Animal manures are not good for the soil unless you convert them into compost, or you convert them to what we call bomber compost. All right? Bomber compost is where you're adding those manures into this compost. Yeah. So you take the manures, add them in this, so that now you reduce the amounts of nitrogen and increase the amounts of carbon. So that now what we call the CN ratio becomes like, if you do 45-1, 45 carbon and 1 nitrogen, that would be excellent. But our compost, this compost is 60-1, 60 carbon and 1 nitrogen. You don't need a lot of nitrogen in your soil. Excess nitrogen will destroy your soil, and it attracts a lot of pests. And that's why most farmers in Central, I'm talking about Central because that's where I'm very familiar with them, they use a lot of farmyard manure, but it doesn't work. They have to go to the shops and buy chemical fertilizers because they say farmyard manure it's not working, because they don't know how to manage it. All right. So whatever we get from our chicken up here and the rabbits that are here, I'll show you the rabbits. Is it open? Yeah. Those are the bunnies. We get manures from there, but the other major thing is to harvest urine. We have harvest the urine. So urine is very, very important because it contains a lot of nitrogen. So whatever that we harvest from there, the manures, we don't take it to the farm directly. You have to ferment that urine for more than 21 days, so that you now apply it in your soil to supply microbes in the soil after fermentation. But if you apply the fresh urine, then you destroy your soil because you're applying a lot of nitrogen. So you have to ferment the urine. All right.
Let the bacteria kind of convert those urea to the right forms.
Is
Yeah.
it too acidic? Is it too acidic like when it starts?
Well, yeah, it's acidic, number one, and number two, it contains a lot of nitrogen. So and we don't want to pump in a lot of nitrogen in the soil. Yeah. So you ferment it first so that it accumulates the microbes. And microbes are very, very important in the soil.
And urine recycling is also a way of capturing phosphorus nutrient that is kind of a constrained resource too, right?
Yeah. And phosphorus is not readily available in the soil. So you have to look at ways in which you'll capture that phosphorus so that it attaches itself in other nutrients. Because phosphorus is not readily available in the soil. So you have to make sure that you are having other nutrients that will capture it. And that's why the microbes are very important.
So the fermenting process helps with that?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Right. So we have chicken up here. Again, we don't use chicken manure. Chicken manure contains a lot of nitrogen. So we have to either apply in the compost or make another fertilizer called bokashi.
Bokashi.
Bokashi?
Yeah. Bokashi?
Bokashi is having a lot of demand right now. We don't have any right
Kind of a Korean composting method.
So we make bokashi
Or
here,
fermenting.
but bokashi is purposely for amendment. Bokashi is for amending the soil. Compost is for building the soil. Bokashi is for amendment. We don't have it right now, but I think materials are ready for making it. Yeah. But we don't really recommend farmers to use bokashi and to use farmyard manure. Simply because I've said farmyard manure contains excess nitrogen, which is not good for the soil. You have to convert that nitrogen into carbon. So making sure that you are adding in a lot of carbon materials in the farmyard manure. And then bokashi is not sustainable. It's not sustainable in the sense that you have to purchase most of the materials. And when you're talking about crop intensive, we are saying don't import from outside. So and you make bokashi using rice husks. You don't have rice here, so you have to go and purchase rice husks. We have to use charcoal dust, which is again not a very good practice because you are cutting down trees. Not a very good practice. You have to import quarry dust and other stuff, other materials. Yeah. So the only focus here is this compost, because any farmer can be able to do that. Yes. Right. And now the other alternative is the black soldier fly. Very strict. So
It's locked.
always locked. But if you can fit in there are flies. The flies are there, and then we have the main two purposes for black soldier flies. Number one is to produce the maggots or the larvae to feed our chickens.
Yeah.
And then number two, we get the fertilizer called frass. That manure is called frass, which is also very good for our soils.
I've heard of people using black soldier fly for processing human manure. For processing manures, they'll add kitchen waste plus manures into a black soldier fly system, and they wind up processing a lot of that stuff really quickly and then it goes through an insect's life cycle, and then it goes into a chicken's life cycle, and you wind up kind of sanitizing the human manure process through a couple of animal steps in the
and
food
they
web.
feed a lot. They really feast on those materials.
Yeah.
And farmers with the pigs, that can be very beneficial to them, because those maggots eat a lot. They convert those materials into usable
Resources. Yeah.
So it will be open and then people to see.